I'm going to read to you a note from today about Martin Luther. He placed himself above Scripture, and in so doing, proved he was a hypocrite and a false teacher. And we've covered his hypocrisy and his false teachings before, and his false prophesying. But this is different. He taught that the Scriptures were the final authority over every Christian, even the Pope. Remember, he was a Catholic at the time, and the Pope was his boss. He was the chief boss, right? And he was not critical of the Pope at first. He only had some differences with the church and their doctrine, and he brought that out. But he eventually called the Pope the Antichrist. So he said that the Scriptures were the sole authority, not just final, the sole authority over every Christian, even the Pope. Yet, when Luther was confronted by Scriptures that rebuked his false doctrine. Which false doctrine? That's a good question. Which one? Because there were many. But the main false doctrine, which was saved by faith alone. And he was confronted with the Scriptures that rebuked his false doctrine, rather than submitting himself to the authority of Scripture, as he claimed was necessary of every Christian, including himself. Rather than submitting himself to the authority of Scripture, he wanted to throw out those books that contained the authority against his teachings, which proved he didn't believe Sola Scriptura, and he definitely didn't submit to it. He refused to submit to it. Instead, he wanted to throw out the book of Jacob, aka James, and he wanted to throw out the book of Jude as well. And that's the book that condemns him as a false teacher based on his behavior against the Catholic authorities, which he took an voluntary vow to God on his own to submit to the authorities in the Catholic Church over him for the rest of his life. And he broke those vows to God. And he turned and said, "Who made you spiritual authority over us?" We've talked about this. His core is rebellion, mentioned in the book of Jude, as a mark, one of the 3 marks of a false teacher. But the other one, the book of James, explicitly says that you cannot be saved by faith alone. It doesn't exclude faith. Absolutely not. Of course not. But it does declare that faith alone is dead. It cannot save you. It cannot save you. It can't. And he even declares in that same breath that the demons have faith and they shiver. And Luther came face to face to this and wanted to throw out the book of Jacob, aka James. The other reformers restrained the madness of Luther, saying, if you do that, we will have a rebellion on our hands against us. And he didn't. But there you go. That's the hypocrisy of Luther. He refused to submit to the Sola Scriptura doctrine that he himself invented. And placed himself above the authority of Scripture, his authority above the authority of Scripture. So if you're still following Luther after this, then you have no excuse when you face God on the final judgment day. And he says, "Why didn't you listen to my servant who was sent to warn you?" May the Lord bless you as you seek him with all your heart.